Hey everyone, with this being our 10th episode and the election season coming to a close, we're looking for possible suggestions for any new episodes coming up. Feel free to reach us at Facebook and Twitter at ThinkProPod or email us at thinkpropod@gmail.com with any suggestions you may have for future topics.
Or any feedback. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like.
Tell us that you hate us and why.
The radical left has taken over the Democratic Party.
Hello and welcome to Think Progressively, covering politics and all the other chaos life has to offer. This is episode 10, recorded on Wednesday, October 21st from Milwaukee. I'm Joe.
And I'm Jason.
And on today's episode, we'll be talking about the Republicans' desperate last-ditch effort to smear Joe Biden before the upcoming election with less than 2 weeks before November 3rd. But first, the headlines.
Fake news.
Fake news.
Fake, disgusting news.
So first, we have to talk about the town halls, right?
I mean, this already sounds like such old news. This was like 3 weeks ago, right?
It seems like it.
Oh my God. Yeah, let's talk about the town halls.
I, unfortunately, just watched them both before recording.
And how is your mental state right now?
Not good.
I'm sorry to hear that, but you volunteered for this.
That's true.
So I feel no sympathy.
So I started with the Joe Biden town hall, and I thought he did pretty well. He took a long time to answer each question. He went really in-depth on his policies. He did still dodge the will you pack the courts question. He seems to be pushing it off until after Barrett is confirmed.
Which makes sense.
But other than that, I thought he did a good job.
It's kind of like what you expected a milquetoast town hall to be, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, he didn't yell at anybody.
No.
According to one of Trump's campaign advisors, Mercedes Schlapp, she said on Twitter, "The Joe Biden town hall feels like I'm watching an episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood," spelling Mr. Rogers incorrectly. When she was told by everyone, Mr. Rogers is an adored American icon and we all love him, her response was, "That was your take. You've gotten so much reaction to that because some people say, well, wait, he's a beloved man, Mr. Rogers. What's wrong with that? We love Mr. Rogers, but I gotta tell you, those puppets were always a little freaky when I was growing up." Pretty sure if you say that in public, Joe, someone's going to slap you in the face.
What is this? Didn't this start with talking about Joe Biden's town hall?
Yeah, and then she's got to take a shot at Mr.
It was
Rogers.
a weird, I
tell you what, even though, he is pretty religious and everything, I would vote for Mr. Rogers for president.
Oh my God, me too.
No problem.
In a heartbeat.
And also, he's from Pennsylvania and beloved there, which is one of the biggest swing states this time around, and where Trump really needs to gain voters. And it's not going to happen this way. Let's compare our opponent in the upcoming election to one of the most beloved figures in American history. Yeah, and someone who basically raised half the country, myself included. I don't think that's going to work out real well.
But that's where, their worldview is so screwed up that that's what they think is bad.
Being nice to people?
Yes. Literally. I would say Biden's town hall was what you expected, right? And I think this was good for him. Even though it wasn't anything exciting, George Stephanopoulos was okay. It was what you expected from a presidential town hall. Milquetoast, boring. He got to say what he wanted to say.
I liked his answers on a lot of the questions, too.
Me too. The fact that it was boring should be a really good thing.
He was wrong, I will say, when he talked about his energy plan on his website. He does state that the Green New Deal is an important framework. And George Stephanopoulos asked him particularly about that line. And he said, no, I say my plan is an important framework. I don't think he's lying there. I just think he's wrong. He doesn't know specifically what it says on his site.
So let's compare that to the absolute crazy circus that was Trump's town hall. Oh my God.
It really was a debate between Trump and Savannah Guthrie.
Well, so let's start with that, right? A lot of conservatives, I think like Ben Shapiro was talking about it. I know a lot of conservatives on my feed were talking about it, how much they hated Guthrie with this because she was supposedly debating Trump. Do you think she approached it well, or should she have done something different?
I think it's Trump's fault. When you go to a network and you say, I want to have a show on prime time, almost no notice, and it's going to be a Trump town hall, they want to get viewers, right? Do people want to see that same milquetoast, Mr. Rogers-like town hall from Donald Trump? Is that going to bring in viewers? No. They want to see confrontation. They want to see him insulting people. They want to see him getting angry. And I think that's what NBC gave him.
So here's my take about the whole thing. When you're in Samantha's shoes, you now saw two separate debates. One was the worst thing you probably have seen in your entire lifetime as far as a presidential debate goes. You saw the vice president debate where it was okay, but in each of those debates, you saw people heavily criticizing the moderators for not pushing back harder and not fact-checking on the spot. When you have people who are so inflammatory and make countless baseless accusations, it makes someone who wants to do a good job pretty aggressive, you know? I'm guessing Samantha, when she came in, she was going to say, okay, I'm going to hold him to account. I'm not going to let him walk all over me. I'm not going to let him lie. And she didn't do that. But then she also came off as pretty aggressive, like she was debating him the entire time.
Yeah, I think definitely with the questions, and she pushed back when he did lie, which was constantly, that I would have expected. When she just came out and attacked him, I think that was 100% trying to give the viewers what they wanted to see.
Yeah, I can see that too.
I think she should have spit on him when he said, oh, that's cute. That would be a reasonable response to that, I feel.
It very much seems similar to that like infamous Jordan Peterson interview where that reporter was trying really hard to challenge Jordan Peterson, but she came off really bad because of it. That's kind of what this sounds like to me.
I didn't think she came off poorly, though.
No, I'm saying like to people who are supporters of like Trump.
Yeah, that's fine. I really don't care what their opinion is. You can be so wrong about something, then I don't really want to listen to you.
Well, let's talk about some of the things that Trump, again, baselessly claimed during his town hall. Trump said, and I quote, "I'm okay with masks. I tell people, wear a mask. But just the other day, they came out with the statement that 85% of people that wear masks catch it." Are you serious?
Yeah, that is wrong.
And that statement was in reference to a major finding of a recent CDC study released September 11th, showing that people in the survey with COVID-19 were twice as likely to have eaten at a restaurant and that eating in restaurants or drinking in bars might be a higher risk activity. The report also found that people in the study with and without COVID-19 reported high levels of wearing masks in public. Among the approximately 150 COVID-19 patients in the study, 85% reported say they always or often wear masks during those 14 days before illness. So he's completely misrepresenting the whole study and just saying outright straight, 85% of people who just wear masks are going to get COVID.
It really has nothing to say about what the effectiveness of wearing a mask is or is not.
And again, this is in complete contradiction that the CDC also had to elaborate on because Trump is an idiot. Multiple studies have shown that masks do drastically inhibit the spread of COVID-19, as well as other viruses.
Just wear a mask. It's not that hard. It protects everyone around you. Do it. One of the most frustrating moments for me was the question about immigration, where Trump said, oh yeah, the reason that we're pushing back against DACA is because of COVID. Again, showing that he doesn't even understand what he's talking about.
No, not at all.
DACA is for people that are already in the country, not for people looking to immigrate into the United States. Those are people that are brought here by their parents who did not have any decision whether or not to come to the United States. And they're asking to not be deported and to get a path to citizenship and being denied. And then Trump says it's because of COVID? That doesn't make any sense. And again, he's just lying to try to say whatever he thinks that lady wanted to hear.
Well, and this is more fear-mongering crap, right? Where you're finding more reasons to be afraid of immigrants. That's all this is. It's just more fear-mongering based on immigration.
And then talked about how they're building the wall and Mexico is helping, which is, again, not true.
And for me, the most infuriating part of this town hall was when Trump was responding to Savannah's question about QAnon. Jason, I don't know about you, but like this is where the most famous or the most infamous part of the town hall came from. The whole idea, like, you're not somebody's crazy uncle line.
Yeah, on Twitter, Mary Trump was like, actually.
Right. So let's quickly break this down. Guthrie says, let me ask you about QAnon. It is this theory that Democrats are a satanic pedophile ring and that you are the savior of that. Now can you just once and for all state that this is completely not true and disavow QAnon in its entirety? The easiest of all questions ever asked anyone, ever. Will you disavow and not support this stupid conspiracy theory of crazy people in our country? Trump's response, I know nothing about QAnon. I know very little. I do know they are very much against pedophilia. You've got to be kidding me.
It's like saying, I don't know anything about the KKK. I hear they're for strong family values, though.
But that's literally not even true, though, because we know that from our recent episodes, Trump was specifically asked multiple times about QAnon and was asked multiple times to disavow QAnon. And he refused to do it then, too. So you can't tell me that he just doesn't know anything about it. When did we do our QAnon episode? That was, like a month or two ago?
Yep. He loves conspiracy theories. He pushes them all the time. And that's where the you're not just somebody's crazy uncle came from, was from asking him why he retweeted a conspiracy theory. And his answer was, I wasn't saying it was true. It was just a retweet.
Oh, I know. That was infuriating. The fact that he was pushing conspiracies about SEAL Team 6 being killed.
Yeah, and Osama bin Laden still being alive.
Right. We literally have a president who's literally like someone's crazy uncle who's just retweeting everything he can because he knows that's what he wants to believe. Yet when he gets called on it, he cowers like a child.
And he has no respect for the office of the president. He doesn't think that he has more responsibility than the average citizen for what he puts out there.
If anyone watched Trump's town hall and still likes him afterwards, I have to severely look into your ethical code here at this point, or just looking into some type of brain function. Something has to be wrong with you at this point. I just do not understand how you can look at what Trump is saying right now and say, yep, I want that guy to lead our country. So where do we stand right now, and when's that next presidential debate going to happen?
As of the recording of this, it will be tomorrow. It will have already happened by the time this is released. But it is Thursday, October 22nd. It will be in Nashville, Tennessee. It will be at 8 p.m. Central Time. It's going to be a 90-minute debate. Topics include COVID-19, American families, race in America, climate change, national security, and leadership.
Leadership.
And of course, Trump is not happy with the topics. They'll also be muting the microphones.
Yes, they will.
Of the other person while the question is being answered for 2 minutes, because they both agreed for all of these debates that you'll get 2 minutes uninterrupted to answer the questions. And of course, Trump called this unfair and specifically targeting him, even though in theory it shouldn't be targeting anyone. They both get the exact same opportunity.
Right, because our president has the temperament of a 6-year-old child.
Let's move on to some local news.
Is he even local at this point?
Well, it is a Wisconsin-centric article. On Monday, The Verge published a very in-depth and very crazy. I really encourage everyone to read this, even if you're not in Wisconsin. It does deal quite heavily with the Trump administration. So Foxconn is a Chinese company famous for making iPhones in the mid-2000s, like the 2010s, where workers were committing suicide and they had to install nets to catch them as they jumped out of the windows. So already a good company. But a few years ago, they bid to open a very large factory in Wisconsin. Then Governor Scott Walker pushed very heavily for it. Trump touted it as part of his huge job creation, and it was big news. It was the largest tax incentive ever given to a private corporation. The tax responsibility on Wisconsin and Mount Pleasant specifically was the city, which is just south of Milwaukee, was $4 billion, which is the largest deal ever done. Foxconn said it would build a 20 million square foot LCD complex, which is supposed to be a Generation 10.5 LCD factory called The Fab. Records show Foxconn recently changed the intended use of the building from manufacturing to storage.
Foxconn also said that it would aim to employ 5,200 people at the end of 2020, a number that was promised to grow to 13,000 jobs. At the end of 2019, though, Wisconsin found Foxconn employed only 281 people eligible under the terms of contract.
So this deal, there was a lot of land involved.
I mean, again, huge.
Right. There were 132 properties that were purchased by Mount Pleasant, which is a very small city, for $152 million plus $7.9 million in relocation costs. So a lot of the people were compensated fairly for their land and their property, but still it's a huge burden. And anyone who didn't want to sell, they were threatened with eminent domain under some very shady practices where the city would say that, oh, we need to widen the road outside of your house in order to do this. And because of that, we are allowed to use eminent domain. Because eminent domain can only be used if the land is to be taken for public use, not for private use. Then, when the people sold the land because they were threatened with eminent domain and told that if you don't take our offer, which is 140% of market value for your property, you're only going to get market value when we declare eminent domain and you're not going to have any choice. Then all of a sudden the plans for widening those roads were gone and that land was just given to Foxconn, which would have been an illegal use of eminent domain in the first place. The city also declared the lands where people did not want to sell and did not have a road they could be threatened with widening or any other public use that they could take under eminent domain, they declared those lands blighted so that they could basically force those owners to sell. This was very bad for everyone who lived there. It's a huge abuse of power, and this was touted by the Trump administration at the federal level, Scott Walker at the state level, and Assembly Speaker Robin Vos, because this is his district. Hopefully, 2 of those people will be gone. Scott Walker's already gone.
Right.
Hopefully, Trump will be gone
Hopefully.
in a couple weeks. And I think that the voters of Wisconsin should get rid of Robin Vos because of this.
Which will be the hardest of the 3.
Yeah, but it needs to happen. Everyone needs to read this article. Fox, this was always a scam. This is like everything Trump has ever done. There was never going to be...
There was no plan. There was no plan with any of this.
Immediately from the start, they were never going to live up to their promises. They tried to scam the state at one point, just hiring workers right at the end of the year.
Yeah, I was just going to say that according to the article, Foxconn attempted to exploit a loophole in its contract with the state by hiring a sufficient number of workers to receive subsidies just before the end of the year. Employees were hired with no actual work to do, and many were laid off after the deadline passed. They were literally saying they had nothing to do. They were just sitting there in their cubicles watching Netflix and playing games.
And people would break down and start crying because they'd left other jobs and they knew this wasn't going to last.
Right. And again, like this also goes hand in hand with the idea of a toxic work environment that was also reported by multiple workers there who were saying they were constantly berated by management for not doing the work they're not being given to do.
So they did not meet their employment goals because there were actually stipulations put in that said that workers had to make so much money during the time that they were employed before they could be counted, and they had to be there for so much time. Once they realized they weren't going to get their tax credits, they just started laying everyone off. So the state did not pay out the majority of their tax credits, but this has still cost an estimated $400 million for state and local government, a lot of that being for Mount Pleasant, who they do not have that kind of money. Mostly for
it's
land.
A rural town area. Like,
yeah, it's mostly farms.
You're right. This is the same crap similar to the Noah's Ark adventure happening in Kentucky, where they basically scammed the state to give tax credits to them with actual no plan to make any real money for the state. In fact, I would even argue that this is worse, though, because we lost so much land that's literally not being done by or being used for anything.
And even though this is obviously completely failed development, they'll never do any significant manufacturing here. There'll never be even a fraction of the jobs promised. The city and state will never make back the money they've already spent on this disaster. But because Trump does not live in reality, this past weekend, in an interview on the NBC affiliate here, TMJ4, Trump insisted that Foxconn had built one of the most incredible plants he's ever seen in Mount Pleasant and would keep its promises and more if he was reelected. This just further goes to show he does not care how badly he has to lie, what the truth is, what's going to happen to people's lives. He doesn't care about any of that. He just wants to be reelected.
Well, look at what he even says that he's quoted in the article here. If we win the election, Foxconn is going to come into our country with money like no other company has come into our country.
That is his go-to
What is that?
tell for when he's lying.
Right.
He always says,
It's the
like
best.
you've never seen, like it's never been done before, like no one's ever seen. He always uses that phrase, and he's always lying.
So we can end it with a line from a former employee of Foxconn. We got screwed. The state got screwed.
And Donald Trump, Scott Walker, and Robin Voss tied our hands to our ankles.
And they need to get voted out. Well, 2 out of the 3 need to get voted out.
Scott Walker could be deported. Be fine with that. All right, I'm a bit depressed now. Let's move on to our next story.
Yeah, and some good news. The United States Supreme Court actually deadlocked on a ruling for Pennsylvania, thus staying their ballot deadline extension for absentee ballots. This is a major win for Democrats, where now they will actually be able to count ballots up to, I think, the Friday after the election, as long as they are postmarked by November 3rd.
This just highlights the importance of the Supreme Court and why we shouldn't let the Republicans dictate who can and can't be on the court.
And we even have Wisconsin's last Supreme Court ruling where they did basically the same thing, but an opposite, right? Where we were going to have a absentee ballot deadline extension, and the Supreme Court reversed that decision.
Conservative majority state Supreme Court. Big surprise. Who doesn't want you to vote?
So there really isn't too much more to really talk about with this article here. Just know that this is a great thing to happen in such a crucial state, because we talked about this last week, Jason, where Pennsylvania is probably one of the most critical states in the entire election right now. So the fact that they're going to have absentee ballots counted up to several days after, this could be a major turning point for Joe Biden in the election, which I'm ecstatic for.
And it does let us know, don't think that you're going to know who won the election on November 3rd. We're not likely to find out at least until the end of the week. Probably not even then. We'll see. Hopefully it doesn't turn into a gigantic legal battle,
Which I
but
think it will.
we are unlikely to know that day. There's no conspiracy. There's no coup happening. It's just there are more mail-in ballots than ever in the history of our country, and it's going to take time to count those. Most states have a law that says you can't even begin counting ballots until polls are closed on Election Day.
Yep. But for now, let's celebrate the good news, because boy, do we need it.
We also have some reports that there was a piece coming up for this weekend on 60 Minutes, where reporter Leslie Stahl is doing interviews with all of the candidates, Joe Biden, Donald Trump, Mike Pence, Kamala Harris. Reportedly, her interview with Trump at the White House did not go very well, and Trump abruptly left before the interview was over.
In a tweet, Trump said, "I am pleased to inform you that for the sake of accuracy in reporting, I am considering posting my interview with Leslie Stahl of 60 Minutes in all caps prior to airtime. This will be done so that everybody can get a glimpse of what a fake and biased," all caps there too, "interview is all about." Fantastic.
And he also accused Leslie Stahl of not wearing a mask while she was in the White House, which is, of course, like everything Donald Trump says, not true. She wore a mask when she came into the White House. She took it off for the interview, and they grabbed a clip of her talking to producers right after the interview was over as proof that she wasn't wearing one. But again, just an attempt to smear her and completely untrue.
Again, how can you think this guy is the leader of our country, or at least he should be? I don't understand. The guy can't even make it through an interview without freaking out. Less than 2 weeks. That's all I can say. We got less than 2 weeks left.
And unfortunately, and probably the worst news we have for you today, ACLU lawyers say they can't find the parents of 545 migrant children separated by the Trump administration. Now, the headline says separated by the Trump administration. And yes, the Trump administration is to blame for the policy that this was under. But I think we all need to be honest and say these children were separated from their parents by the American government. And we all need to take ownership that this is what our government is doing, and this is the way it's going to be seen by the world, by these families, and we need to put a stop to it. This is the legacy we're building. If you wanted to create a generation of people who hate the United States, who were made orphans by the United States, this is what we're doing. This is from a pilot program in 2017, which separated over 1,000 parents from their children, separated over 1,000 families at the border, deported the parents, held the children, and then when it was determined by a judge that this was not legal and that those families had to be reunited and a deal with the ACLU was struck in order to have them do this, they can now not find 545 children's parents. And they are literally going door to door in the neighborhoods that they were reported to be in and trying to get a hold of other family members, anyone they can, to try to get these children back with their families. But we've created 545 orphans. And this isn't even the zero tolerance policy that was put in place.
No, that was after this.
Right, in 2018 by the Trump administration, which there we're talking about 2,800 families, most of whom are still in custody. So at least we can find their parents, if they're still alive, in jail when, hopefully, Trump is kicked out of office and this is reversed and we can try to reunite all these people. And I think, now, I have zero power to do this. What should happen is all of these children and all of their parents should be immediately granted citizenship as some kind of recompense for this atrocity. It's child abuse.
Right.
It's
This is the
torture.
disaster. This is horrible.
And we need to make this right as best we can as a country. Because, again, you can say Trump administration, and it's true that they're the ones doing it. But that's not the way this is perceived by these families, by the rest of the world. It's America. America is doing this. We are separating families. We are creating orphans. We are destroying people's lives. And we have to deal with that. We voted Donald Trump in, and this is what he's doing under our watch.
It's absolutely disgusting.
I certainly hope all the luck for the ACLU lawyers to be able to find these parents or at least another family member that these kids can stay with. And again, I hope that they're granted citizenship. I hope someone pushes that idea to the incoming Biden administration when they win this election.
Left wing, we're going left wing all the way.
So let's talk about Hunter Biden and his emails, I guess. We're doing emails again like last time. History seems to repeat itself.
This is a crazy article from the New York Post. Let's lay the groundwork.
Where do you want to start?
Let's start at the provenance of this laptop or laptops. Very odd story. In 2019, someone, we don't know who, reportedly Hunter Biden, but we're not sure, and neither is the shop owner because he's legally blind. Crazy. Someone went into a computer repair shop in Delaware and dropped off apparently 3 laptops, 3 MacBooks, and an external hard drive for data recovery. That's what the receipt says, supposedly signed by Hunter Biden. The story is also that they were water damaged. So that's a lot of water. You get 3 laptops and an external hard drive. And if you have an external did the external hard drive get water damaged?
I have no idea.
Why does that need data recovery? You could plug that into another computer. It's super shady. I worked as a computer repair person for 5 years. Years ago, I was the service manager of a local computer chain here. This story does not sound realistic to me at all. So the story goes, this guy recovered the data that was on these laptops, but now we're going to forget about 2 of the laptops because it doesn't show up anymore at all. I don't know what happened to them, whose they were. Did they all belong to the same person? We don't know. We're down to 1 laptop that's believed to belong to Hunter Biden and this external hard drive.
Right, which again cannot be verified
at all. The guy doesn't know who dropped it off because he's blind.
And even quoted saying He couldn't positively identify the customer as Hunter Biden, but said that the laptop bore a sticker from the Beau Biden Foundation. That was it.
So these repairs were done. No one came to pick up the laptop. Sent multiple requests. Nothing came back. So, as you do,
You snoop through them.
yeah, you start looking through the data. Let's look at all the files. Let's look at emails. Let's look at text messages.
What is that?
Let's look at pictures. Again, as someone who's worked at a computer shop, this is not done. If you've got hardware that someone's not picking up, it's just sitting on a shelf somewhere. All you're going to do at that point, once it becomes your property, especially this is a MacBook that's supposedly from 2017. So this is a 2-year-old MacBook Pro. Still has a lot of value. You would scrub the hard drive because it's yours now, and you would sell it or use it for parts if it is damaged. But of course, that's not what he did. He dug through all of the data and then sent it to the FBI because he believed that there was evidence of criminality.
And again, that's such a large stretch to make. Why would this random guy even know what to look for? I mean, there were also random accusations of child pornography and stuff on there too that Republicans are kind of just letting simmer. But even then, besides something like that obvious, what the hell would you even know about random emails to foreign execs?
Yeah, this guy was an expert on foreign affairs too.
Right. So what is this? Well, so let's talk about the email that's in question right now.
First, let's look at how we got from sending it to the FBI to an article in the New York Post.
Oh, yeah, we can talk about that.
The FBI apparently looked at this data and, one, didn't find anything that they could indict anybody for, right? There were nothing came of this case.
No.
As of yet. So, because of that, this patriot, blind computer store owner who's an expert in foreign affairs, decided, well, I have to go to Rudy Giuliani with this information. Because now, not only did he give the laptop over and the external hard drive over to the FBI, he saved a copy of the data for himself, as you would as an upstanding citizen. So now he sent this data to Rudy Giuliani's lawyer.
So Giuliani supposedly has this hard drive of information, and he takes it to multiple news outlets, and everyone turns him away. Literally everyone, even Fox News. He took the story to Fox News, and even they turned him away because they couldn't vet the article or the information given. So he goes to a tabloid, New York Post, and even by his own words, Mr. Giuliani told the New York Times that he chose the Post because, quote, either nobody else would take it, or if they look at it, they would spend all their time they could to try to contradict it before they put it out.
Actual journalists do things like
fact-checking
and vetting the provenance of this information, which is the most shady thing I've ever heard.
And this isn't anything new for Giuliani either. The White House was specifically warned by U.S. intelligence that Giuliani was being targeted by Russian intel operations to feed misinformation to Donald Trump. He is so out there with his sources that he'll just randomly spread misinformation given to him by anybody. It doesn't matter.
And a lot of this data, because it's text messages and photos and emails, does not look like something that you would have on your laptop hard drive.
No.
It sounds like something you would get from hacking someone's iCloud account. And that's almost certainly where this data actually comes from. Probably multiple people's iCloud accounts. Burisma themselves said that they were hacked previously. That's likely where this data came from. And this laptop computer repair story is just some odd way to try to cover for the fact that this is likely, again, same as 2016, Russian hackers trying to give information to Donald Trump and the Trump administration in order to influence the election.
But let's focus a little bit more just to finish out Rudy Giuliani's role in all this. So he gets a tip from Steve Bannon, the guy who's currently facing federal fraud charges right now, to do this, and eventually gives it to the New York Post, who is at first hesitant on the story, but eventually pushes it through anyway.
Now, did the New York Post, there are some actual journalists that work there, even though it is a tabloid owned by Rupert Murdoch, the owner of News Corp and Fox. Bruce Golding, who is reportedly the actual writer of the article, did not want his byline to be used because he had concerns over the article's credibility. So the two names that appear on the article are Emma Jo Morris, who recently had a job as a producer for the Sean Hannity show and did not have her name on any article since college.
Yeah, nothing. This is her first thing at the New York Post.
And the other was Gabriel von Rogue, who really reportedly had nothing to do with this article and didn't even know that her name would be appearing on it until after it was published. That's how shady this story is.
And even then, other New York Post reporters were also critical of the article, saying, quote, "It's not something that meets my journalistic standards," one Post told the New York Magazine. Another Post reporter called it very flimsy and said, "Just makes you cringe and roll your eyes, and it's hard to stomach, but at the same time, we could have known that you're signing up," or who could have known that you're signing up for stuff like that. It's disappointing and it sucks to work for a propaganda outlet.
So even they know this is propaganda. What is the information? What is so damning in here? What proves that Joe Biden and his family are a criminal enterprise?
An email, basically, and some text messages that show Hunter Biden is a loose cannon. What do you want from me here?
Yeah, we can skip past the pictures of Hunter Biden passed out, the messages about his drug use. We already know this. This is part of his history. He's been through rehab. He's had drug problems. This is nothing new.
The newest piece of information from this article is an email to Hunter from a Vadim Pozharsky saying, and I'll quote it here, "Dear Hunter, thank you for inviting me to DC and giving me an opportunity to meet your father and spend some time together. It's realty, an honor, and pleasure. As we spoke yesterday evening, would be great to meet today for a quick coffee. What do you think? I could come to you office somewhere around noon or so, before or on my way to airport. Best, V."
So the big bombshell here would be that Hunter Biden used the fact that his father was vice president in order to advance his career
and enrich himself
and set up private meetings between his business interests and his father, which would be a scandal. I don't know that it's worse than the constant scam that Trump is running by billing the American people for his Secret Service detail every weekend to go golfing, and the millions of dollars that he's made off of that continues to go on, which is illegal. It's against the Hatch Act. But we won't what about this too much.
Right. And I do want to say just a couple of things on this. Obviously, people were asking the Biden campaign about all this stuff and what their comment was on it. As of right now, there's no documentation to any of this ever happening. And a Biden spokesperson did say, and I quote, "We have reviewed Joe Biden's official schedules for the time, and no meeting as alleged by the New York Post ever took place." Now, that's what you expect them to say, right? I mean, even if it was Trump, I would expect them to deny it. So I'm okay with that as being like, let's be skeptical with that. However, that's not proof that this is happening. That's not proof that Joe Biden is shady. The burden of proof is still on the New York Post for doing this. And this is just more generalized, vapid tabloid garbage.
And I don't doubt that Hunter Biden was only hired by Burisma because his father is the vice president. People who have powerful, privileged lives get things that are not available to the rest of us. That is a proven fact. Why are everybody's kids always involved in politics? And Chelsea Clinton has a job with a big news organization. All of the Trump family all have government jobs right now. This has always happened. It shouldn't, but that's the way the world works. And it's not sign of like a criminal conspiracy by the Biden family.
Well, and you saw Trump even saying that Biden's family is like a crime organization. Like, are you serious? You're going to compare crime families right now?
And even looking through these emails, there's one from Hunter to his business partner, Devon Archer, where he said the announcement of "my guys," probably in reference to his father, upcoming travels should be characterized as part of our advice and thinking, but what he will say and do is out of our hands. Now, that is likely saying that Joe Biden's upcoming trip to Ukraine should be leveraged by them. They should use that as leverage in their negotiations with Burisma, but that they can't control anything that Joe Biden says or does. That goes against this accusation that Joe Biden specifically did things in order to benefit his son. And that is in this report that the New York Post put out, which, no, you don't see right-wing outlets focusing on that. The main crux of this story seems to be the Ukrainian prosecutor that was fired.
That was basically strong-armed by Biden and other federal or other nationwide country officials from around the world because of corruption.
The EU specifically.
Right.
Yeah. And in these emails, there does appear to be an exchange from another executive at Burisma detailing the fact that this prosecutor was blackmailing the president of Burisma, or the CEO of Burisma, to try to extort him for money, or he would launch a criminal investigation against the company. And that executive going to Hunter Biden saying, hey, is there anything you can do about this? Which, let's not forget, he is a lawyer. Hunter Biden is a law graduate from Yale. So it's not like he has no credentials and wouldn't be able to get a high-paying job anywhere if he weren't Joe Biden's son. He does have a pretty expensive education and might be, besides the drug use, a very good lawyer. Who knows? But again, it just shows this prosecutor that was fired was blackmailing large businesses in the Ukraine and probably throughout Europe. That's why he was fired.
But let's talk about that because that is the main crux of this entire argument. And we need to remember that there were 2 Republican-led Senate committees that investigated this and found no evidence that Joe Biden did anything wrong. So let's talk about the latest one by our Senator Ron Johnson. Hooray. He bragged for weeks how this would be a groundbreaking investigation that would basically show Biden as unfit to be president. He came in with the goal to trash Biden. So let's start with that. His partisan politics went far beyond his duty to his country with this. He cared more about smearing Biden more than anything else. So great start, right?
And we watched a clip of an interview he had on Fox News where the host implied that due to handwriting analysis on the subpoena from the FBI for this laptop, although the copy I saw was typed, so I don't know what they're talking about with handwriting, but they basically implied that the FBI agent that wrote the subpoena works on child pornography cases. So why would he be subpoenaing this laptop unless Hunter Biden was involved in child pornography? And Ron Johnson completely didn't want to say that. Like, he very much walked a tightrope of, I'm not going to deny it because I want that out there that possibly there's child pornography involved here.
Well, he literally said, like, well, I mean, you just connected the dots, so, it's whatever you think.
Yeah, he clearly is trying to not get sued by saying there's child pornography or that Hunter Biden had child pornography, but didn't want to deny, didn't want to say, like, no, that's crazy. Again, he's very much just a mini Trump at this point. He's doing the exact same thing. Trump has infected the Republican Party.
And I'm not really going to get into the whole idea of should we defend the character of Hunter Biden? I know some liberals are like super offended, like how dare Trump and his administration and Republicans try to slander the character of Hunter Biden, who's been going through a very hard time, and how someone who's trying to battle drug addiction, which, by the way, is also very stupid and horrible at the same time. I'm not going to deny that, but I don't really care about that. If Hunter Biden's an absolute dirtbag and he is the worst person imaginable, that would still mean nothing for this story about Joe Biden. Nothing. Because Hunter Biden and his potential carelessness or whatever he did, unless it's actually going against American policy that shows that Joe Biden was corrupt, this has nothing to do with anything.
It's just evidence of nepotism, which we
fine.
knew about.
Right.
It sucks. It's our system. We need to get money out of politics to just erase this kind of potential for corruption to begin with. And I'm all for it. But you're not going to accomplish that with the president that has done more to bring in corruption and greed into the White House than any other president in my lifetime.
And again, if the Senate-led Republican committees had anything to actually find and report, they would have done so. But they found nothing. And again, all these accusations made by Republicans, including Ron Johnson, were already debunked and called out years ago, especially during Trump's impeachment hearings, where Republicans tried to bring up Hunter Biden back then as well. Kurt Volker, U.S. Special Envoy to Ukraine, during Trump's impeachment hearings, referred to these things as conspiracy theories. Though their scope was ultimately broader, Republicans set out to scrutinize a specific claim raised by Mr. Trump that Biden had corruptly pushed for the ouster of Ukraine's top prosecutor who had been investigating Burisma. That's it. However, they found no evidence of any of this. In fact, Ron Johnson's report heavily relied on testimony from George Kent, who was the State Department official who was dealing with Ukraine. And also you may remember him from Trump's impeachment hearings as well. Kent detailed his concerns that Hunter's position on Burisma's board made it difficult for American diplomats. However, he told Johnson's staff, and I quote, "There was no time, as I've testified, that the U.S. government, the U.S. Embassy, has ever made a decision where we took the presence of a private citizen on the board into account, and that he did not witness any efforts by any U.S. official to shield Burisma from scrutiny." They did the exact opposite of what Republicans are accusing them of. Joe Biden actively hurt the company that his son was on.
It seems to me that what Burisma was doing, they were getting blackmailed by a corrupt prosecutor. They knew that Joe Biden was in charge of dealing with Ukraine. They hired his son to be a member of the board as a shield to try to say to this prosecutor, hey, stop coming after us. Look who we have in our company, to try to give that guy pause. They knew about this corruption. The U.S. already knew. They had already reported it to the State Department, according to these same documents. And other countries in the EU were aware of this as well, and they were already pushing to get this guy fired. So to say this is Joe Biden's corruption, he got a corrupt prosecutor that was blackmailing companies fired, look how terrible he is, I really don't see it. I really can't say that this is the scandal of our generation.
Because it's not. It's a tabloid. That's all it is. And let's be honest here about what the motive of this entire story is. This is exactly the strategy they used in 2016, trying to find some crazy story right before the election to try to shift things around. We now know what the Republican strategy actually is. They're going to smear Hunter Biden as much as possible and try to paint Joe Biden as the most corrupt politician ever, because that's all they have. To be honest, it's almost kind of working, where you're seeing this story being shared more than any other article in the last week. And the point of this story isn't necessarily to just push out to smear Joe Biden. The idea is to then force people and news outlets to then comment on the story. If enough people are searching for it, you're going to have people do fact checks about it, and you're going to have articles about the article and everything like that. Next thing you know, it becomes the main story that everyone's talking about, and they're completely ignoring the fact that Trump has let over 200,000 people die because of his bad response to COVID. That's all this is.
And this is an almost exact mirror for what happened in 2016.
Exactly.
There was an announcement from James Comey, who was then the FBI director, when he sent a letter to Congress announcing the reopening of the investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails on October 28th, 2016, 11 days before the election, which was on November 8th of that year. This is almost exactly the same timeline, where right before the election, you're getting this story that comes out about these emails basically pointing towards corruption for Trump's opponent.
Because that's all they have. They have nothing else. And even then, in 2016, they had some point that they could actually make with a winning strategy here, because Trump wasn't already in office. Trump was the outsider. You can't make that argument anymore because Trump's already president.
And it is crazy for Trump to make the argument that someone else is benefiting their family by their position in office.
Oh, it's laughable.
And that should not be allowed. It is the most, it's just projection like you see with everything else, where he knows what he's doing is wrong and that his using his family is wrong. So he is pushing this story to say, no, it's actually Biden that is the criminal crime family, not the Trump family. And it's just ridiculous. So as you said, everyone's sharing this, everyone's posting this. When we were first investigating the story, I actually had a hard time outside of Fox News, Sky News Australia, which is basically the Fox News of Australia, very conservative, right-wing media outlet, and Crazy People on YouTube. I really couldn't find much analysis of this.
Well, yeah, and that's because Facebook and Twitter initially blocked the article, or at least lowered its spread. So we can talk a little bit about that. There's some interesting things that are going on with this article. I think it actually brings up a really good ethical discussion that I don't think we should go into too much because this is already going pretty long. But just for sake of what's been happening, we'll catch you up. Basically, Facebook put a nice little veil over this and said that it was going to limit its spread until it was able to fact check it by third-party fact checkers. Twitter then also announced that it was going to take it down initially because it violated its personal information and hacking guidelines. YouTube basically didn't do anything. Hooray for YouTube. So we have kind of this weird little scale of different options being taken here for this issue. You have YouTube not doing anything, Twitter kind of using the nuclear option, and Facebook is trying to find this happy medium between the two. You had several Republicans actually had their posts taken down on Twitter, and the Trump campaign account and even White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany's Twitter was actually temporarily locked because they were sharing this article, which of course prompted a ton of Republican backlash because they were talking about how this is censorship and how social media giants are interfering in the election and blah, 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 blah. So there was actually a very good, interesting article by The Verge again. Apparently that's going to be our featured source this week. That kind of breaks down couple of key points of interest for this. And they talk about, first off, can Facebook and Twitter legally do this? Yes, they can. They have a couple different pieces of defense, which is most commonly known as Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, which is the whole idea between if you are a platform online, you are not considered a publisher, therefore you do not have the liability of what's actually posted on your platform. And you have also the ability to make your platform what it is. But even more so, this is a First Amendment case too, where you have companies with the ability to say what they want and what they don't want on their website. I mean, it's kind of an obvious thing. If you run a restaurant or run any type of local business and you have even a coworker or even a customer who's spouting off crazy nonsense or cursing or whatever it is, you have the right to kick them out or to fire them. So, but the real question is, should Facebook and Twitter do this? And Jason, I'm kind of interested in hearing your opinion about this. I'm not entirely sure. I think the idea that our social media platforms are becoming so gigantic and that since the internet is practically becoming synonymous with social media at this point, it's almost incredibly hard to find alternatives to this type of stuff. I really don't know what's the best thing to do here.
In general, I would say they should block stories like this, particularly because there are the photos, which are very personal. Apparently, there's a video of Hunter Biden having sex with someone that was included in this. It's not in the New York Post article, but it's referenced. This happened, I don't know if you remember, a few years ago, where a bunch of celebrities' iCloud accounts were hacked and personal pictures were released online. A lot of intimate pictures. Social media should try to protect people from the spread of this hacked information, which is why Twitter initially blocked it completely, because I think to anyone who's in the technology industry really that spends time with this, you look at the information that was released, it's very clear this is from someone's hacked account. This is not somebody's laptop hard drive. If you look at the pictures and you look at the text messages and the emails, and again, I've spent a lot of time in the IT world. I'm no expert. I'm not anyone who would be considered, forensic analysis or anything like that. But just the feel that you get from looking at the type of information and what it looks like it's hacked off of someone's account. Not, this is, we got folders off of somebody's laptop. This is on their hard drive on their desktop. These are not the type of photos you would have saved in your pictures folder on your laptop. These are things that would be on your phone, things that would be uploaded to your iCloud account. And I do think they have a responsibility to protect people's privacy when there are things like that floating out there so that they don't have the spread of this type of personal information on their platform. Now that's generally. Specifically in this instance, when it was a very political issue, when it's a public figure, when it was a New York Post, excuse me. Sorry, New York Times, I didn't mean to slander you like that. A New York Post article. All it does when you block that, and this is exactly what we saw happen, is give the Republicans the opportunity to claim persecution, to lash out against the social media companies, and to make that the news story. Not that this information is ridiculous and clearly stolen from people's accounts, but that it's all about this true story that these social media companies don't want you to see because they want to protect the criminal mastermind Joe and Hunter Biden.
Well, and that's what scares me with a lot of this too, where it's very vague and kind of ominous type of stuff, which does a great job at scaring the crap out of a lot of people when used properly. So right before the election now, you're going to have basically the entire right start saying the entire, I don't even want to call it the Imperial Army is out to get them, where you have Big Brother social media working for Biden. You have federal officials working for Biden, supposedly. You have Barack Obama's campaign who was working for Biden. This is a mass conspiracy in their eyes, and they will act on it. And I'm actually kind of glad you brought up the New York Times on accident, because I was listening to a recent Daily episode where they were talking about this exact issue with social media and this New York Post article. And Michael Barbaro was talking about how social media giants, I mean, I don't feel too bad for them, but they're kind of between a rock and a hard place here, where they're being accused for interfering with the election by trying to prevent interference of the election. And I really don't know what they should be doing here. I would love for them to have more fact checking. I would love for them to have more control over this type of stuff, because as we talked about in a previous episode, Jason, you weren't here, but with me and Dan, we talked about how misinformation spreads 6 times faster on social media than true information does. So they have to have a better handle on this, but every time they try to, they're accused of overreach. So I'm not sure what they're supposed to do. All in all, don't fall for any of the nonsense. We now know what the Republican strategy is. They're going to paint Joe Biden as corrupt. They're going to paint themselves as the underdogs against these big social media giants for censoring them. Don't fall for it. Stick to the facts, stay focused, and recognize a tabloid story when you see one. Listen to various sources who are trying to also vet this article. And for all we know, it could be true, but it's not vetted. So until we get some actual demonstrable evidence to prove any of this as reliable, treat it as the tabloid garbage it is. Focus on COVID, focus on the real issues that matter, focus on healthcare, get your friends out, and go vote.
That's what this is really about. And that's what happened 4 years ago. Saying that Hillary Clinton was corrupt and showing her emails and saying, oh, she's going to get investigated by the FBI.
It suppressed the vote.
Right. It didn't gain votes for Donald Trump, but it kept people home instead of voting for Hillary Clinton.
They're trying to make sure that both sides are equivocated here.
And I think we know that's not true.
So keep your eyes on the prize. We're almost there. We got less than 2 weeks left. Thank you for listening. We hope to see you in the next episode. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at ThinkProPod. You can email us at thinkpropod@gmail.com. And remember, when in doubt, think progressively. I'm Joe.
And I'm Jason. They don't know. So not very old yet. Still has a lot of on the article. Was Emma Joe?
I can't. And for me, the most infuriating thing had to be Trump's response to Sam. And for me, the most infuriating part of the town hall had to be when Trump's was. And for me, the most infuriating part of that town hall had to be Trump's response to Sam. Oh my God, I want to say Samantha. I keep saying Sam.
Yeah, it's Savannah.
Oh, is it really?
Yes.
Oh, I've said Samantha multiple times.